Regulation H is officially set to begin within a week, meaning now is as good a time as any to drop an initial tier list on the format. One thing I do like about initial tier lists is there's always so much to talk about. There's always so many things that I'm presumably just going to get wrong. There's things people are going to get right. There's calls that you kind of have to make. And I'm curious as to what you guys think and how you guys are looking at the format right now. So let me know down below as we go through this if you think I've criminally misranked something. I didn't give something a fair shake. Let me know. I love kind of like engaging in this and seeing what's going on and seeing how wrong I actually was when we look back on this in a couple months after the meta actually develops. But I think that's enough rambling. Let's jump into things right now, starting with the best of the best. And obviously kicking off this category, guys, Archaladon should be no surprise here. It is by far one of the most oppressive mons in the format at the moment. And just the ability to have Electro Shot to boost its special attack. Having the Rain beside Pelipper is incredibly nice for that as well. Covers a lot of the typing issues that it would normally have. You also get access to Big Dragon and Steel Stabs, along with a secondary mode in Body Press. So those that try to like snarl you down and whittle you away are paying the price of having to eat like +3, +4 body presses. And it's just an incredibly strong mon. Its weakest stat is patched by that Assault Vest that it likes to carry. And overall, this mon is going to be around. It is going to be a game of how do I break Archaladon a lot of the times in team building. And that by far puts it at best of the best in the category where we're at right now in the format. Gholdengo, the steel type friend of Archaladon here, and long story short, in case you haven't noticed, steel types are kind of broken right now. Gholdengo, incredible. Gholdengo is nothing new. We've seen Gholdengo in a ton of formats like this in the past. It started picking up a lot of good usage at the end of Regulation A. Saw a lot of stuff as well through the rest of the regulations. Even Regulation G, it managed to withstand a test of time. But turns out good as gold and being immune to every support move in the game is a good ability. It actually is good as gold. But overall, the options with Gholdengo are endless. You can set up, you can run choice specs for immediate damage, you can get leftovers, you can go bulky. Tons of options here, puts out tons of damage, great typing on top of a great ability. This Pokemon is going to be around, and this Pokemon will be solid. Pretty much any format I think it's going to be allowed in, it should be good. I'd be shocked if this thing ever gets outclassed. If this thing ever gets outclassed, I might as well retire. Moving on the list here, we've got Ursaluna Blood Moon. And Blood Moon Ursaluna is a Pokemon that we didn't have in Regulation A, and I think is going to be that big ground type that players are going to gravitate towards in this format. Because I remember back in Regulation A, you know, we had a little bit of the Garchomp teams, you know, we had Talon Chomp. But I really think that Ursaluna is that piece right now. You get the opportunities to just all of a sudden drop Terranormal Blood Moons into something. Not a lot wants to take that. You hit the ghost types because of your ability, even with your normal type moves. And it just feels incredible. You have the ability to put out so much burst damage. And you're pretty strong on the physical defensive side as well. There's not a lot of special attackers, so your weak special defense isn't necessarily hindering you all that much. That is still where you're kind of falling off a little bit, but as a whole, it's not a big deal for this thing. You're doing so much damage anyways. You get this thing with the right speed control, whether it's Tailwind or Trick Room. This thing is putting on a lot of work for your team, and it's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with in this format. Moving on, we now have our solid options category, and I'm going to let you guys know I tried to rank the first category and the second category here in terms of viability as well, like within the ranks. But as a whole, though, I think a lot of this is going to change. And like I said before in the opening, it's very early in the format. Anyways, Kingambit. Kingambit is personally one of my favorite mons to use. It is incredibly, incredibly strong. And just like Gholdengo, there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can go crazy offensive. You can go like set up Swords Dance, Black Glasses, and then just drop with like the mono dark stuff, Kowtow Cleave, Sucker Punch. You can go Assault Vest. You can play it defensively. You can kind of play like an in-between ground where you have safety goggles on it. And I think because you can do so much with Kingambit, given its typing into some of the good things that are going around right now, especially like those Gholdengos, Kingambit definitely deserves to be a solid option, and it will be around throughout the metagame. It's a little bit frail on that special side, especially into some of the things like the Volcaronas that are going around. Doesn't appreciate the Archaludons. So there are some things that beat it. So it definitely isn't the best of the best, but it's still a very strong option moving forward. And Volcarona has impressed me early format. It's set up. It's really, really strong. Right? Just the ability to go Quiver Dance and keep pace with some of the crazy top pieces on the ladder there. Like, you see the best of the best. I think a well-positioned Volcarona can beat all three of those pieces if surrounded correctly. And I think because of that, it deserves to be in a solid option. It's one of the better fire types in the format as well. Nice little setup. Very good special attacker, which, as I mentioned earlier, not a lot going around. It's going to be good, and I'm curious to see if it actually holds up as the meta develops, because a lot of the times Volcarona falls off, but I think this might be the format. Instant Rillaboom, guys. I'm not going to say much on Incineroar and Rillaboom. I don't think there's much to say. Fake Out, Intimidate Grassy Terrain, incredibly strong. They're going to be solid options regardless of whatever format they're in. They're good. They're going to be here. There's not much else to say there. Ursaluna Regular, or the Hisuian version. I'm convinced that ground types are hard to come by in this format, and I think Hisuian Ursaluna is actually a very strong option, especially on like teams where they're Trick Roomy or have that Trick Room mode, more so than the Blood Moon. The Blood Moon does appreciate the Tailwind stuff, but this regular Ursaluna here, being able to get into Trick Room, it really benefits from it. And just having that option to get Trick Room up, getting the Flame Body up, you just punish if they give you the free switch. And you can follow me Trick Room. When your follow me user dies, Ursaluna comes in for free. All of a sudden, you can start punishing. You can set up if you're trying to double protect with like a Swords Dance. Very strong option. Hits a lot of things very, very hard. Intimidate is kind of around, but as a whole, it's not too much around right now. It's pretty much just the Incineroar and a couple of the Tauroses. There might be one or two others. I know Gyarados is on this list somewhere, but as a whole, I think Ursaluna is very, very strong. If you can get it into position in Trick Room, you are golden, and I think it's definitely being slept on right now. Indeedee Hatterene, once again, not a lot to say about Indeedee Hatterene, guys. These are just some of the most consistent pieces to get Trick Room up in the game. Indeedee with the Psychic Terrain is incredible. Follow me, incredible. And then Hatterene's ability, just pretty much allowing you to basically not even need to click Follow Me all the time, because you just bounce the Spores back. You bounce the Taunts back in the other direction. So those two together are going to be solid. Even on their own, they're going to be solid. That's why they're up here. Primarina might be a little bit high, I will admit. But I've actually been rather impressed with the Primarinas that I've seen performing in tours and stuff like that. It seems to be a strong option, especially with the access to Haze. You can do a lot of good damage on the special side, which, as I mentioned before, there's not a lot of those. So anytime I see like a big special attacker, I'm inclined to put it up at a little bit higher in the tier list, just because there's not a lot of them, and Water Fairy is an incredible typing for Primarina. I think you're definitely going to see a lot of Primarina as the formats continue. Amoonguss, we actually haven't seen a lot of in this format, but I am convinced that Amoonguss is still good. I mean, it's still around. We've seen it paired beside the Archaludons. We've seen it paired beside the Goldengos. It's definitely still good. It's an Amoonguss at the end of the day. Once again, similar to the Goldengo, if Amoonguss is ever getting outclassed, it might be time for me to retire. Now, it's just something I don't see ever happening. Spore, Redirection, Pollen Puff to heal your partner up. It's just really good. It's got a really good toolkit for what it wants to do. It also has generally pretty decent typing to resist some of the fighting type damage, as well as the water type attacks that are coming out from the format right now. Annihilape, similar to Primarina, I think this one might be a tad bit high. It's one of those ones that tends to be paired, when it's paired with like a mouse hold, it can do a lot of crazy things, force a lot of 50-50s. But I think on its own, it's not as strong. But I think because you're able to pair it with things that just make it so strong, it is a very strong option. Obviously, you cannot intimidate it. You can go Terra Fire to get around some of the Will-O-Wisps that are in the format. And I think as a whole, Annihilape is an incredibly strong option, especially if you build it like bulky. You then have the versatility if you wanted to go Choice Scarf. There's a lot of options with Annihilape. Rage Fist is a broken move as well. So nothing new with Annihilape here, but it's definitely going to be a strong option in Regulation H. Moving on to the good category, I've got a lot of support options in here that are really only good because of what they're supporting, but they're good because they're capable of supporting those pieces in this format. So stuff like Whimsicott and Talonflame, They're very, very strong at supporting that best of the best category. The Tailwind support from the Priority Tailwind is incredibly strong. And normally I'd be a little bit more reluctant with these pieces because Prankster Tailwind tends to be better in more high-powered formats. But if you're pairing these things with the Goldengos, the Ursalunas, and the Archaludons, they're probably going to hold out in this format as well. Getting Tailwind up immediately on your side of the field is very, very strong. They also come with very nice toolkits of support. Whimsicott, highlighted league being Encore, and Talonflame just being that taunt, that Will-O-Wisp is very, very nice. Both of them are awesome. And they put on a lot of pressure onto opposing teams with with those priority moves, and it's really, really solid overall. Torkoal, Pelipper, these are the weather setters, in my opinion, that we're going to see a lot of. Pelipper specifically, it could easily be a solid option in this format. I could easily move Pelipper up, but for right now, I think I'm very happy keeping it down in the good section. I think it's only so good right now because of what it's supporting. So I think because you compare it with Archaludon, Pelipper gets a boost because Archaludon is so good. You kind of need it for the Archaludon teams. So I think similar to the Torkoal, right? They're good on their own, but they really benefit from just supporting the stuff that's above them right now. And I think that's what just makes them really strong. The type synergies with some of this stuff up here is incredible. Torkoal more so on like the hard Trick Room teams with like the Indeedee and the Hatterene as a really good way to break Rillaboom stuff is incredibly, incredibly strong. Dondozo, guys, there's not much to say here. Dondozo is a Pokemon that forces teams to have counterplay to it, and then generally has counterplay to the counterplay to it. So if a well-built Dondozo team is technically probably always going to be, at the very least, somewhat viable, this Pokemon is going to be good in Reg H. There's no escaping it. We had a nice little break from it in Regulation G, at least until, it like did well at Worlds, but besides the point, Dondozo will be back pretty much in full force for Regulation H. If you haven't seen any other videos or any other gameplay yet, you're going to see a lot of Haze, you're going to see a lot of Clear Smog, Intimidate to cycle it down. There's a lot of stuff counterplay to Dozo right now, but Dozo's still going to be very, very strong. Hydreigon, probably one of the more versatile options in the format. In terms of special damage, in terms of you can go Assault Vest, you can go offensive, and I think the versatility is what makes it so strong. The typing into the Goldengo is also very good for it as well. Just being able to hit the Goldengos, being able to hit the Indeedee and the Psy Spam core as well, not really be crumbling to the expanding forces is nice. You can go Terra Steel and wall out Blood Moon because you're resisting the normal type attacks and you are immune to the ground type attacks based on your Levitate ability. Lots of good things going for Hydreigon. You get access to Tailwind if you want it. Snarl is very, very cool as well. This Pokemon is going to be strong. Tyranitar is a little bit of a worse weather setter because it doesn't really support anything going up above, like anything like that's really, really strong, like the Pelipper, like the Torkoal, but it's still a really strong piece on its own. You can slap an Assault Vest, and you're a Dark type. You have access to Knockoff now. There's a lot of good things going on for Tyranitar, so I think Tyranitar as a whole should be up here. I don't really know too much. Sandstream is nice to break sashes, but as a whole, that doesn't really matter too much. You're looking at this as kind of like your special wall, but what hurts it is, like I said, there's not a lot of special attackers. So T-Tar very, very strong, but definitely not as splashable as some of the other options. Maushold, you are going to see Maushold beside Annihilape. You are going to see Maushold beside maybe Goldengo, maybe Archaludon, but most predominantly you are seeing this Pokemon beside Annihilape. The type synergy there is crazy. Maushold Annihilape is nothing new. We've seen it around for a long time now, at least since Scarlet and Violet was released. So we know what's going on there. It forces a bunch of 50-50s, and you can do a lot of good things just to side boost your Rage Fist. Maushold is a good Pokemon. Friend Guard is a broken ability. We'll say that once again when we get to Clefairy in a bit. But Friend Guard is broken. Maushold is very, very strong and supports Annihilape really, really well. Glimmora now is one of those Pokemon where how much do you really want to gamble? It is a very strong option on the Dondozo teams because you can kind of lead it up front, make your opponent deal with it, maybe drop like a Mortal Spin, poison both of your opponents, get Toxic Spikes up, and then Dondozo can hit the field and slow the game right down. And I think that's very, very strong. But you can also play the game with Glimmora on a non-Dondozo team, probably where you are on Focus Sash, or depending on how much you really want to gamble, you can talk about going Power Herb, Meteor Beam as well. But that option is incredibly scary, but it's also incredibly strong. So it's scary to run, but if you can capitalize and you're okay saying, hey, I may just miss this move, it is a very strong option in this format, I think. There's not a lot that really appreciates eating a Meteor Beam off of a Glimmora. Both the Tauroses, I think, are very good. It's really, there's a lack of fighting types right now. Intimidate is very, very strong as always. And you basically just pick whether you want a fire type or a water type, and you go from there. You can run supportive with these pieces. You can send like Life Orb, or like maybe even, honestly, I haven't seen any choice bands, but I know you can get aggressive with these pieces. You can do some Mirror Herb stuff. So if you intimidate a Kingambit, you get the +2, and then you can all of a sudden fire off some big attacks down that way. Very, very strong. Both Pokemon, I think, are going to find their place in the meta. In terms of where that ends up being, it's tough to say right now, but I think both of them are going to be very strong. The big dragons in terms of Dragonite and Dragapult. Dragonite has proven that it does not need Shenpao. You can still run the banded stuff, but you can also play some more like wild sets now. The format seems to be a lot slower than past formats, so you can afford to like set up your Dragonite with a Dragon Dance. Maybe you can afford for Dragonite to be your Tailwind setter. But I think as a whole, there's a lot of versatility here. It's a good mon. Same with Dragapult. There's just a lot of stats on the board. And when you have stats on the board and you can put some multipliers on things are going to go well. So these two big Dragon types are going to be around. Next, we've got just the Follow Me bots. I'm going to group all 4 of these together. They all have their advantages. They all have their disadvantages. They might be a little bit high, but I value Follow Me and I value Redirection very high, especially early format, because it just allows you to get around a lot of things that maybe you weren't prepared for. And I think, once again, as the format develops, you're able to better prep into things, so maybe your need for Follow Me on certain teams becomes less. But early in the format, there's a lot of things and a lot of teams where you may just not be prepared for it, so having a Follow Me user just gives you that option into a lot of the things you weren't ready for. And I think as a whole, all 4 of these guys are very viable. They all have kind of do their own thing. Clefable with its Unaware ability, Clefairy with Friend Guard, and then of course you got the Vital Spirit and the electric typing. I think Eerie Impulse is cool from Electabuzz as well. Magmar gets access to like Will-O-Wisp, Clear Smog if you wanted to deal with Dondozo that way. So there's a lot of cool options from all 4 of these Follow Me users. Find one that fits your team the best. I think they're all really solid. Moving on. We're going to go to the probably good category. I'm going to start speeding this one up. We're going to be here all day if I don't start jumping over things. But Basculegion, very, very nice on Rain Cores. Hits like a truck. If you go Adaptability, you don't need to have the Rain. But if you go Swift Swim and you compare Choice Band to Wave Crash in Rain, good. Hisuian Typhlosion probably outclasses regular Typhlosion in terms of the whole Whimsicott, Sunny Day, Choice Specs, Eruption stuff. And it's basically because you're immune to Fake Out until you Terra. So because of that, you're just able to like lead Whimsicott Typhlosion very, very quickly. And then you can either Sunny Day if you're faster, Sunny Day Eruption. And if you're not faster, maybe you just Tailwind, Terra, Fire Eruption. You have a lot of tools with this. It hits everything pretty hard. And I think it's a very intriguing way to deal with some of the rain that's going around, because you also end up with Manual Sun. So you can always win the Weather War in that regard, which I think is very, very cool. Armarouge is one of those Pokemon that I want to say is going to do well. I'm also kind of preying on its downfall. I'm not a huge Armarouge fan, especially with like the weak armor, weakness policy stuff. But it's going to be around. You're going to see it on some Trick Room teams, guys, but that's probably the extent of it. Meteor Beam is cool, but I think Hatterene kind of fulfills that purpose of Armarouge a little bit better than Armarouge does. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Armarouge is good, but probably not sold on it. These 3 Intimidators here, guys, I'm going to just group together. They were historically good in slower formats. I haven't found a spot for them on a lot of my teams that I've been building. But as a whole, I think all 3 of these Intimidators, they have a chance to be around. Obviously, we've seen Bandit rock Arcanine before. We've seen Gyarados do things with like that full support set. And then obviously Arcanine, historically just very good in these limited dex formats. So I'm curious to see if they find their places. Gengar and Hisuian Overquill, I guess it's not really Hisuian, it's just Overquill. Overquill is one of those Pokemon that I think can benefit from Pelipper or Chaladon being around, and is a very cool option on some of those rain teams here. You get access to the dark moves to start dealing with stuff like maybe like a Dragapult, some of the psychic type stuff that's going around. And you also get access to poison offense, and that's kind of where Gengar ties into this one as well. And The poison offense right now does a lot. Yes, Archelodon and Goldengo and Kingambit are like the 3 big Pokemon in the format, but a lot of support pieces do not like taking poison damage, and they just do a lot of damage in general. Gengar, like I said before, lack of special attackers. So Gengar being that, it's kind of like a Flutter Mane at home, and it's doing its job. You also get access to Haze if you're looking to shut down Dondozo that way. I think both of these have a chance to be pretty good. Sinistcha, it's nothing new. You can switch it in. You can heal up your Archelodon with the Hospitality ability. I think Heat Proof probably deserves a shout out as well, depending on how you're looking. If maybe you're trying to just focus on getting Trick Room up with this piece, I think Heat Proof has a shout out and has a niche. But as a whole, Sinistcha, very, very good. Redirection, Trick Room, Grass Ghost, pretty good typing as well. Can't go wrong with that. Baxcalibur, very, very strong. We've seen it in the past. We haven't seen it do much in this format, but I think as a whole, Baxcalibur is going to be very strong once again. Just another one of those big dragons that, if allowed to just do things, can do things. Porygon 2, probably your more balanced mode of a Trick Room option. Right, if you want to be like a more balanced player and not have Indeedee, Hatterene stuff for your Trick Room mode, Porygon 2 is going to be a very solid option. Just Trick Room, Recover, just stuff. It's been around for ages, guys. We know what Porygon 2 does at this point. Garchomp, I've seen a lot of people ranking this high. I've seen a lot of people ranking this very, very low. In my testing, it's kind of mediocre. When I really need a ground type move, it does the job. But I can't be spamming Earthquake beside Talonflame anymore because Rillaboom's on a lot of the majority of teams. So it kind of loses a little bit of value that way. It's all right. It's probably going to be good on certain teams, but outside of that, I can't really see it. Meowscarada, very, very good. Flower Trick, we've seen it in past formats. The problem with running Meowscarada now is you have to give up another grass type slot for it. Still a very good mon. Unless you're willing to run double grass, though, it's very tough to like drop a Rillaboom, drop an Amoonguss, right? There's better Pokemon, better grass types in my opinion than the Meowscarada, but if you're looking for a very aggressive Pokemon, very offensive oriented, I think it's a very strong piece in this format, and it will have success. Murkrow, once again, just the lesser of the Prankster Tailwind users. My problem with it is it doesn't do a lot. It doesn't do as much. Its niche is that you can clear stats, which is very good with Haze, right? It's very strong, but I don't think it puts on nearly as much pressure with the Talonflame, with the Whimsicott. I think Talonflame and Whimsicott just put out more pressure into more matchups than what Murkrow provides. Now, don't get me wrong, Murkrow's still very strong, but that's pretty much all it's good for, right? You're going to get Tailwind, you're going to be able to Haze, and that's pretty much all you've got going. You probably have a few other things that I'm going to get yelled at for, but as a whole, I do think it's good, but not quite as good as some of the other Prankster Tailwind users. Giraffe, still good, but there's not a lot of priority going around right now. So it's good, but if priority starts picking back up, it's going to be even better. It's still a very good Pokemon with busted ability. So depending on how the meta shapes up, Giraffe is going to be good. Sneasler is a Pokemon I'm very intrigued in, seeing how it goes. From what I've seen in the format, I do think it has a lot of niches. Like I said, Poison offense, very, very good. Dire Claw as well is an absolutely broken move with the chances of putting RNG in your favor. And that's not talked enough about in this game. When you can put RNG in your favor without risking RNG against you, it's very good, right? So, like, putting Will-O-Wisp, you can put things in your favor, right? But like with Rock Slide, you can put RNG in your favor, but you have to risk missing. But with Dire Claw, it's 100% accurate, and you've got a 50% chance to land one of 3 status conditions, and that has no drawback to you. You're just clicking a strong poison offense move, and if you get a poison, or if you get a sleep, or if you get a paralysis, good for you. You just put odds in your favor. We saw it with the Blizzard spam team, where it's like, you know what, you're clicking Blizzard, eventually you're going to get a freeze, so you're putting RNG in your favor. Similar with this Sneasler, I think you can do a lot with whether it's Grassy Seed, Psychic Seed, and you can go with like Swords Dance, you can go Acrobatics if you wanted to Terra Flying, but Dire Claw close combat, maybe even a Dark type coverage move, is probably more than enough to make Sneasler work. Gallade is just kind of that Trick Room support mon. It's a good mon. It's going to be primarily on Trick Room teams, but Wide Guard, Sharpness ability, very, very strong. Salamence I was reluctant on. I was going to put it down a little lower saying I need more data, but I really do think Intimidate from Salamence being just another one of those like big dragons that's kind of just around in the format. I do believe in Salamence. It gets access to support moves like Tailwind. You can run some cool things with like Rocky Helmet. You can run Draco, Air Slash. You can go physical, maybe set up a Dragon Dance. A lot of options with Salamence. I definitely think it's a good piece. Hisuian Zoroark is this good strictly because of the mind games. I don't know how Hisuian Zoroark holds up as the meta develops. I don't know how it holds up versus a lot of the metagame, but what I do know is it completely walls out Annihilate, and in my opinion, that's very good. Now it can wall out Annihilate and play a lot of mind games with other players as well. In other matchups, you can just lead it. No one really knows it's a Hisuian Zoroark. It's very tough to identify. It's going to be good. It's kind of the more like, I don't want to say psychotic way to approach the game, but if you approach this game from a very aggressive standpoint, you can do a lot. You can force a lot of plays in your favor. And I'm curious to see if anybody can find a way to really like, yeah, this is like the ultimate mind game. I lead Zoroark and I pretend it's whatever this mon is. And because I'm doing that, it puts me in so many favorable positions. So I'm waiting to see if anybody can kind of crack the code with it. But it's definitely going to be good. The question is going to be how good. Hisuian Lilligant is the Lilycole partner of the format. So Lilligant Torkoal here. It just outclasses the other Lilligant entirely. You get access to stuff like Triple Axle if you wanted to, Solar Blade, Leaf Blade, both really strong options. And then you get Close Combat. And in a format where there's not a lot of fighting types, Lilligant could be good. We just saw it win that 430-person tour over the past weekend. So lots of good things going for Hisuian Lilligant here. It's going to be a good mon in this format, primarily with that Torkoal, but overall good mon. Garganacl, I'm curious if it can actually do anything. It's got a really good ability. Salt Cure is a really good move as well, especially with 3 steel types being at the top of the meta. Now, you might not want to eat the steel type attack, but if you can Terra or redirect and get some Salt Cures off, you're doing a core health to Kingambit, Gholdengo, and Archaludon at the end of every turn, and that's a lot of health in a format like this. So I'm curious if Garganacl slips back into the metagame. Braviary, interesting, kind of one of those anti-meta picks. I'm kind of making a call saying that it's probably going to be good here. Normal flying is actually pretty strong. You do a lot in the mouse ape. You get Tailwind. You have the Defiant ability, so you can't get intimidated. Brave Bird, Close Combat. If you wanted a normal type attack with like a double edge, you probably could get away with it. But I think just Brave Bird, Close Combat is more than enough here on Braviary, and it feels pretty good. I tested it a little bit. It's a pretty fun mon. Hisuian Decidueye, I think, is only up this high because it's like, haha, cool mon, cool funny little move in triple arrows, which is kind of funny. I think after time it is going to fall off, but right now it's kind of there. It does get access to haze and stuff. It's there, it's around, it's kind of decent. Palafin kind of fallen off. This might actually be high for it as well. It might need to go down to the next category. But as a whole, pretty cool mon. Once again, we know all there is to know about Palafin, but it's a little bit tougher to set up right now. The Rillaboom being around is a huge problem for it. Archaludon being around is a huge problem for it. I don't think it's bad, but it's definitely a lot harder to make work than it was in the past. Skeledirge, just unaware, being able to terrestrialize, and maybe just if you can find a niche on the right team, it's going to be really, really good. It's a very good Dozo answer. You can kind of Terra Grass or Terra Fairy and just sit in front of the Dondozos, which is incredibly strong in a metagame like this. And if you can just find other ways and other matchups to use the Skeledirge in and justify it as your fire type slot, I think there's a lot of potential for it. Ninetales hasn't really seen a lot of usage. I still believe in it, just mainly because I think Aurora Veil is going to be good. Being able to change the weather is going to be good. Where you go about putting it on the team, that's a little bit more tough because, like I said, Kingambit, Gholdengo, Archaludon, 3 steel types are dominating the format right now. If those die down, Ninetales is going to be amazing. And I think you can still probably try to force it into games, but it's definitely a lot harder than not, which is why it's all the way down here and not kind of up and just straight up good. Dusclops is one of those Trick Room users that I think we're going to see at some point because Trick Room is going to try to find a way to adapt. Trick Room is going to look for that, you know, I'm going to set Trick Room, I'm going to proc a policy with like a Brick Break, right? We saw a little bit of it, I believe it was Regulation F, I want to say, with the Dusclops Dusclops Blood Moon. So you'd like Trick Room and then you'd Brick Break your Ursaluna and then you'd be at +2 on everything with your Ursaluna. We could very easily see that again. And I'd be curious to see where and when it actually slots in because I don't think it's a question of if Dusclops is going to find a niche. It's when is Dusclops going to find that niche. Because I do think it's a very good option for Trick Room. Okay, this is the need more data category. And this is the category I'm going to breathe through this because apparently we're already at like 30 minutes. And this is long enough for this video. Pawmot, Revival Blessing could be cool. Curious as to where it fits in. Corviknight, nice and bulky, slow tailwind setter. Mirror Armor is a really good ability. Kilowattrel is very interesting. You do get access to like fast Eerie Impulse to help slow down Archaludon. Competitive is a good ability. Volt Absorb is a good ability. Is it Wind Rider that it gets as well? I think it might be Wind Rider, but either way, pretty good abilities there. Fast Tailwind, that's all you really need sometimes. It's a cool option. Grimmsnarl, we know what everything Grimmsnarl does, guys. Screens is never necessarily bad depending on how metas develop, but right now it doesn't really have that place. Typhlosion, like I said, I think the Hisuian one kind of outclasses it, but the Specs, Eruption, and stuff like that, it's got a place. I just think the Hisuian one outclasses it a little bit. Komodo is very, very good. We've got options to be Iron Defense Body Press. We've got options to be set up with the Clangorous Soul Blaze, which is definitely something to look into, but I need more data. I don't have enough data to say that this thing is good or not. It's definitely in the testing phase. Mimikyu, I believe in Mimikyu. It's got a pretty good typing, very good and successful at getting Trick Room up, which could be a very good mode on as a secondary option. I don't think you're going to see Mimikyu primarily on those hard Trick Room teams because they will lean towards Indeedee, but Mimikyu on its own, very, very strong as a secondary option. Conkeldurr just strictly because it's a fighting type and there's not a lot of fighting types out there. Good ability, decent stats, really wants to be on that Trick Room team, but really tough to justify putting it on a Trick Room team. Just because there's better Trick Room pieces, but I'm very curious to see if it's like waiting for its time or if it's actually going to like just fold and be bad again. Could be good, definitely interesting. Zard and Blastoise. So Charizard is basically the Typhlosion kind of option. If you want to go Choice Scarf like Solar Power, that's an option. Blastoise I'm not sold on. I'm going to need a lot more data here. But stuff like Fake Out is never necessarily a bad thing. You can kind of do some things. Both the Raichus are kind of here as experimental. You get Lightning Rod, Lightning Rod on the one, and then Surge Surfer on the other. The Alolan one's probably just not going to be good. But I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt because, like, he's here and he's cute, okay? Alolan Persian is... I'm curious to see if it fits into the meta. There are a lot of good dark types right now. But this is maybe me being, like, so focused on, like, 2017 and trying to relive the glory days. But this Pokemon used to be incredibly strong. So I'm curious if these, you know, those fast parting shots, the fake outs, the foul plays, taunt, if that kind of stuff comes back, if Persian actually ends up being pretty good because of it. You also get access to Snarl and stuff. The Slowbros and the Slowkings, I don't know enough about them in this format, but they're genuinely good mons generally, so it's interesting to see if they're actually going to hold out or not. So I kind of put them here, see what people want to test. Politoed, I fear, is outclassed by Pelipper, but you do get access to some cool things like Encore and Perish Song. If you're looking for those kind of niches, you could see it. Lack of electric types in the format, I can definitely see Magnezone being pretty decent. Could be something to look into. Magnet Pull as well to trap some of those steel types if you wanted to play it that way. That could be fun. The eggs, I think you just need more data on. A lot of this is just kind of that way. I'll probably start skipping a few now, but Hitmontop, Intimidate, Swift Swim, but probably outclassed. Swift Swim, but probably outclassed. The Weezing Galar kind of just loses to the Goldengo stuff. The regular Weezing probably has a little bit more credibility to it. Orthworm could be something that's good again. Weavile is interesting. It's pretty fast. It's like Shenpao at home. Or I guess Shenpao was just like the new and improved Weavile. So this is like original Shenpao. I don't know. Both these ice types could be cool as like a replacement. There's not a lot of ice types in this format, so I could see both of them doing well. Metagross, Melodic. I'm curious to see if these guys hold out. Metagross, obviously Clear Body. Melodic with that Coil, Hypnosis, Muddy Water set, I think has potential at just kind of sitting around in the format. And you get a couple coils set up and you kind of just sit there. I think the biggest drawback for this is, once again, that Archaludon is too good right now. But I think Melodic has potential. Pachirisu could be cool, may not be cool. Gastron really just depends on the evolution of the water types in the metagame. There's a chance, but I need more data. The Rotoms are cool, but every time I test them, they feel outclassed. Eerie Impulse is cool. It kind of walls out like the Archelodon stuff, but as a whole, probably outclassed, but curious to see if there's more data on it. Espathra, Ceruledge, all like these like Regulation A Pokemon. Kind of that can be around, but aren't necessarily like around. I'm curious to see how the meta develops if they have a niche. But like same with Scrafty, it's like, it's cool. There's not a lot of fighting types right now, so it's an option. But I don't know where that niche actually is right now. Toxtricity is very, very cool. There's a niche here. Definitely want to be curious to testing that out. Hisui and Goodra feels fraudulent when I test it, but I don't know. I feel like there's something there still. Arachnid is pretty good. Just won that big tour over the weekend, so that's an option. Daxbun with the well-baked body stuff, with the body presses, which is kind of cool. That was big back in Regulation A, so maybe beside the Typhlosion stuff, you can take like Lava Plume as your last move and just start setting up your Daxbun here, which is kind of fun. Stonjourner to boost some of the more powerhouse heavy teams in the tournament. But overall, guys, that's gonna pretty much do it for this list. I'm gonna slowly scroll through this bottom tier as we just kind of wrap up this video. There's gonna be stuff down here. You guys are probably gonna be like, hey, this is actually pretty good. But like I said, it's early. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, if I've criminally underrated something, if you guys think I missed something in general, if I rated something at least a little bit too high. But as a whole, guys, this is pretty much going to do it for the tier list. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you guys do enjoy this type of video, please please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm gonna get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.